Awesome. So, as I was saying, the name of the podcast is the Big Questions Podcast. And the biggest question of all, the question I ask all of my guests is the following: Who are you?
So I'm Charley Burton. I'm this simple guy that lives in this rural area. That the little town is called North Garden. It's about 12 miles south of Charlottesville, Virginia. I was born and raised here. Um, who am I? I'm just okay. So no ego here, but I know I make a difference in the world. And I think I make a difference in the world because, like my mother, I'm just brutally honest about everything. And so, who am I? I'm just this brutally honest guy who was born in the wrong body. And I don't even like to say that I was born in the wrong body. I like to say, and I'm gonna back up. I like to say I was born in the body that I was supposed to live in for 50 years. And then the other body emerged when I started finding my voice and realizing this next stage of life, I need to live in a different form. And so need to live in that form as a male. Um, I would love for people to see me as a trans man first, but unfortunately, that's not the case. What people see is the Black man. And here in Charlottesville, living in the South, that has its disadvantages. But I would my goal in life, my enduring purpose in life now for how many more years I have on this earth is to be of service to people. And so, kind of segueing in, why did I write the book? That's exactly why. I in the book, Margot beautifully explains how, well, we both beautifully explain how a lot of those chapters I was smashed to the gill. I was drunk. I was living in this garage apartment that was the best that I could do that my parents had. Um, I was close to 500 pounds. I rarely saw the downstairs of my house because I could barely make it down the steps. So my parents cut a door that I could go back and forth to their house, the straight path to the refrigerator. And then if I did venture downstairs, the only reason I ventured downstairs was that it was where we smoked crack, drank, partied, and then I, wobble my way back upstairs. And I would get in front of this Commodore 64 computer with a big floppy disk, and I would just start writing. And I always said that I felt like there was a story that I wanted to publish a book, but I didn't think my story meant anything.
Mm.
I think that who would want to read about somebody who's 500 pounds, a drug addict, hates life, suicidal, barely can hold down a job, minimum high school education, and who would want to read that? And actually, I had put all that on. I was continuing to write. I was continuing to put in the blog. I did the blog just to kind of follow my transition, and then I stopped writing. After I started the transition in some of the blog, you'll notice that in the book, the blog just kind of stops because I just felt like, okay, that's it.
Mm.
There's nothing, I'm done. And it wasn't until Margot was at that conference that she sent that little, I always say that she stalked me. So I sent this little, she sent this little note, would you be interested in telling your story? And my response to her was, I have a story, but I don't know, I don't know what to do with this. And
Yeah.
so that created this beautiful path of what used to be, I believe we started out on Mondays maybe, or Tuesdays, and then we moved to Thursdays, but it was this beautiful relationship built between the two of us. And someone who finally saw my writing as something of worth.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Margot's got a nose for a good story, and
She
for
does.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's a good judge of character as well. Like when she gravitates to people and stuff like that, it's usually for a reason. So, wow, that's well, thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that. And so, basically, you've been meeting and having conversations with Margot, like basically on a weekly basis for how long now?
Over a year. We did
Wow.
over a year. I knew of her because Jude Patton had asked me to write a piece for trans ancestors, and I did that. But I was like, okay, so I can write stuff if you ask me what a topic is, and I can write. But do people really want to read that? And then, I just I realized that I have this craft of taking my story and making it a storytelling type path. But I also have this craft that I can also create that on page. Now, editing, I suck at. So I always use Margot for everything. But I guess, we all have gifts. And, I'm just this grateful guy because I shouldn't even be here. I should be dead at 500 pounds. I should be dead at all the stuff I stuffed in my body: food, drugs, alcohol, the dangerous places that I put myself. I should not be here. And I keep getting these extensions of life. That's what I like to call them. I keep getting these extensions of life. And so now I appreciate these extensions of life, and I want to give extensions to life to other people. And, I'll pick my book up and flip through it every now and then. And I was flipping through it last night, and I was like, okay, who am I helping? Who am I going to help with this book? And in this book, I'm helping people who are trying to get in recovery, elders who transition later in life, young guys who have transitioned and who, like me, have sat in the mirror and said, I'm ready to blow my brains out. And you read the story and you're like, this guy went through abuse, this guy went through substance abuse, this guy went through, harsh breakup, and I'm still standing. And we all can still stand. That's what I hope that my book portrays, is that we all can still stand. And so not all of us are going to have the Margos in life. We're not going to be fortunate enough to have the Margos in life, but there are other Margos out there, and you can be your own Margot if you want to be able to write your own book. So I encourage people, whether it becomes a book or not, you just write. I mean, I think a lot of times that writing saved me. I can remember just up there in that hot ass garage, upstairs, and in this little tiny bedroom with that big bulky computer, liquor, pot, whatever, and I'm writing to literally save my life, because I didn't know, I didn't have the voice that I have today, so I couldn't speak it, and so I was able to write it, and I would never go back and read it. I would never go back and read it. And I remember when Margot sent me the books, when she would send me the book, and when she sent it to me electronically for the final time to read, I struggled. I struggled because I was like, I've never really read anything that I've written.
So writing for you is therapeutic. It's getting it out. It's catharsis. Yeah. Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a tough read. And my family, who is so proud of me, and I have the most fantastic family, and even though the stuff that happened to me, it happened. And they did the best that they could do. My parents, they did the best that they could do. I mean, for a long time, I hated my mother so, but through recovery, through Alcoholics Anonymous, that was that art of forgiveness. And I knew I had to forgive, or I was going to drink. And so I worked on that. I worked the steps on forgiving her. And then I realized there's not a lot I had to forgive her for, because she was just doing the best that she could do.
There you have it. Yeah, the best that all of our parents did, right?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Wow. So yeah, that's a nice overview of kind of your life, the motives for writing the book and stuff like that. And I don't know if you want to get into some details. I mean, I've started reading your book. I'm several chapters into it. You say it's a tough read. I have to agree with you. But as we spoke before a couple of weeks back when we first met on that Zoom call, I think that it's important for people like myself to take a share of those traumas, take a share of those experiences that you went through, in a way to honor them, because it's like that happened to you is there's no words for it. Some of the things that you went through and describe in this book, the least I can do is share in that with you and honor your experience. And I personally think that, you listed off a large group of people that you're trying to help. I think anybody can benefit from reading your story, whether they're of color, whether they're trans or not, makes no difference, because what you described very vividly at the beginning of this book that really resonated with me was the skin underneath. The
Mhm.
skin, and I think everybody can relate to that. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that experience of what does it mean to you when you talk about the skin underneath and how it was itching to come out? Like, what was that like growing up, and how would you describe that sort of that whole feeling, that paradigm?
So when I think about my childhood, and so the book talks about the dissociative disorder that I lived in for so long. So there are just snippets of stuff that I really vividly remember. And so my parents were the janitors of the local elementary school that I went to. And at the old school, it was this old brick building, three-story brick building, but they had one of those coolest merry-go-rounds, one of those big old steel ones where you just go really fast and you jump off and you fall and fuck your knee all up and stuff, And so I just remember sitting on that merry-go-round and not knowing what group I mixed with. The guys weren't going to play with me. They wanted me to play with them because I was even big. I was a hell of an athlete, and I give that to my brother. He really coached me to be a hell of an athlete, and so I was a great athlete. And they wanted me, but the guys were someone wanted to pick this girl to play with them, and the girls didn't want me because they felt like I was just different. And so many times I sit on this merry-go-round by myself. And so, I was chubby, so I was too big to really scale the monkey bars, and I didn't want to swing. And, I was getting really too big to even fit the sliding board. They had this huge, almost like a 7-foot, what I thought it was back in the day, metal sliding board that burned your ass when you came down in the heat. And I didn't fit.
Yeah.
And I remember my sister and mother would go to the grocery store. So we would talk about going to town, which is 12 miles in. And my parents pretty much had everything and they were farmers too. So we pretty much had everything. We didn't know what it was like to go to the grocery store and buy eggs. My mother made mayonnaise, everything, canning, the whole nine yards. But we would go get necessary stuff. Yeah. And I would beg them to take me to the library and drop me off and just let me read. And I would be in the library in the children's section, but I wanted to just kind of migrate over to the adult section to get something about sex, or figure out, because all this shit's going in my head, and to get something about how can I kill myself.
Wow.
And
so, how old approximately were you at this stage?
About 8 or 9.
Wow.
8 or 9, probably about the age of me on the cover of that book. Yeah. And so I'm in this library, and of course it's mostly all these white kids that have friends, and their parents have dropped them off for library hour, and here I am all by myself, and I'm trying to sneak over into the sections where I'm not supposed to be, because I want to try to read on how I can do something, A, to myself, and B, what is all this stuff going in my head. My mother would fight with me because I didn't want to sit down to pee. She would fight with me because I didn't want to wear a shirt outside. Why can't I be like my brother and my father and keep my shirt off? It was a struggle all the time. And so I remember at about 10 or 11, I snuck in the kitchen in the late of the night, and I got the sharpest knife that I could. And I thought, if I can cut the layers of my skin, maybe I would be maybe it's underneath here. It's exactly what I'm supposed to be. And that stuck with me. So when Margo and I talked about the title of the book, I knew exactly what that title was going to be. It was going to be The Boy Beneath My Skin, because I felt like if I could physically remove the skin, maybe it's there. And as I go through life, I didn't have to physically remove anything.
Right.
I just had to be able to get comfortable being in that skin. And I talk a lot about how even a few years ago, I would get up in the morning and I wouldn't even look in the mirror to even brush my teeth. I hated the look of me. I hated that look. I didn't like to smile. I didn't smile. If you see some pictures of me, I didn't start smiling until a couple of years ago. I didn't start feeling happy until a few years ago when it was just like, you know how you have the Legos or a puzzle and you're searching for that last piece of that puzzle to make that fit.
Yeah.
And finally you're turning it around and you're turning it around and all of a sudden it's just like the light bulb clicks on and it's like it goes to the right and slides in. And it was almost like that one morning. I just woke up and I just realized, okay, so I've changed my name. I'm living in the gender that I need to be in. I'm sober. I have a fairly decent job for the first time in my life. I'm not dodging bill collectors. I'm living in a home that's okay. And I finally raised my head up from brushing my teeth. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, damn, I like what I see. Here's that boy beneath the skin. I like exactly what I see. And I'm comfortable. And that comfortableness started with Margot, another level, when we started working together. And then there was this final, and there'll always be pieces where I'll get more comfortable and whatever. But I remember my first night sitting on the screen and I'm in Morehouse. And I'm taking my classes at Morehouse and I'm on the screen with 60, 65 other men. And this anxiety starts building like, oh my God, they're going to find out who I am. They're going to say I'm not a man. And so for 2 or 3 weeks, I was able to build a rapport with these men because I'm the oldest one in the room. You know, most of them are in their 30s, 40s. I'm the oldest. I'm 61. I'm the oldest. And they gave me that respect. And then some kind of way, a subject by LGBTQ and all that came up. And I started hearing, you know, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. And this professor told them, you can keep your bullshit ideas to yourself, but when you bring them in this room, I have the power to hit the reject button and kick you out. But realize when I kick you out, that means you're not going to get a grade in my class because this is what I believe in.
Yeah.
When he said that, it allowed me to speak up and say, hey guys, I mean, you know, you guys, we've been talking and texting, and I'm in these groups with you guys, but there's something you need to know is that I'm trans. And it was just this outpouring of love.
Wow.
It was this outpouring of love from these macho men. And I finally realized here's the last piece of this particular puzzle that I now fit as a man and as a Black man at a predominantly Black school. And I fit in with them. And it wasn't 2 weeks later that they named me Morehouse Man of the Month, you know, and I'm like, I'm accepted. In the big book, Bill Wilson writes about how he felt like every time he took a drink or things were working, he felt like he had arrived. And so I took that negativity of what he was saying and I brought it into the positive, and I'm like, I have arrived. You know, I'm back in school, which I never thought I could make it. I struggle. I mean, I sent Margot a lot of papers for her to help me write or edit for me. And the beauty is that Charley now knows how to ask for help. And Charley knows how to no longer hide up under that skin and be afraid of being who he really is. And it's okay sometimes for Charley. It's okay for me to look in the mirror sometimes and say, I don't like what I see today. But guess what? I'm going to do something. And by the end of the day, when I look back in that mirror and brush my teeth before I go to bed, I'm going to exactly like what I see. And I accept who I am. And so I no longer have to feel like I got to cut that skin away. Yeah. Because it's now, it's molded into who it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Wow. And again, like as you're talking, all this stuff resonates with, I mean, this is pertinent to anybody, regardless of what their, you know, skin color or gender identity or whatever. It's about self-love and self-acceptance. And that's what everybody's struggling with these days, you know? So the fact that, again, you're getting to that, you're at that stage now where you love and accept yourself as you are, and you feel like you're authentically yourself. You're not, you know, again, like repressing a part of yourself or anything like that is, I mean, that's a beautiful story. And the path that you took to get here, of course, I think has a lot to offer for people because you went through a lot of pain and suffering, as you've alluded to already.
Right.
you're able to go through that and find your authentic self and
Yeah.
and learn to accept and love it. So that's amazing. You refer to Alcoholics Anonymous quite a bit in the book. I noticed that you're quoting from the big book quite a lot. So when did that begin for you, that journey into the world of recovery? Was that something recent as well, or is that
So I'm 16 years in recovery.
oh wow, okay, yeah, so it's not a recent thing, you've been at it for a while.
16 years.
Yeah.
And so Charlottesville recovery community, the AA community, it's probably about 300 people.
Wow.
And it's maybe 4 or 5 of us that are people of color. And there are 3 of us that are trans that I know of.
Okay.
And of course, COVID has just kind of split everything up so people don't go to a lot of meetings anymore, and it's Zoom. And I had nowhere else to go. It had gotten to the point where I was just overdosing and overdosing and overdosing. And I'm landing in the ER trying to land meds, and I'm landing in the ER hoping someone would save me. And I had this one last weekend before May 22nd that was just horrible. I was just drinking everything I could drink. I was popping pills. I just didn't have anywhere else to go. And I ended up going, and it was the most life-changing experience that's ever happened to me. And I don't think any of us, I wouldn't be here talking to you. I would have never met Margot. I would never have the job that I have. I probably wouldn't have this house. I wouldn't be alive if it had not been for Alcoholics Anonymous. The community, so that weekend before I went in on, it was a Wednesday on the 22nd, and that Saturday I went to an all women's meeting. And I went in and I listened, and there's a part that they read called How It Works. And it pretty much says that you too can get this if you're honest. And I was sitting in that meeting with all these women, and I'm like, I'm not honest yet. And so I saw a couple of people get up and pick up this white chip, the surrender chip. And I was like, not picking it up, not ready. When I pick that thing up, that means commitment. And when I pick it up, that means I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm not done. And that was that harsh weekend. But I remember I walked out on this big porch in this building, and I approached 3 white women, and I asked them if they could just talk to me about sponsorship and what AA, and they turned and they looked at me like I was dirt. And they pointed over to this young Black girl who had just picked up a white chip and said, maybe she can help you. And I'm thinking, well, she just picked up a chip. And so I went back out and I drank, and I had this friend that lived in Jersey who was trying to help me get sober. And I was lying to her right and left. I remember she asked me, we were trying to read the Deep Book on the phone. And so she asked me that Sunday, she said, go to chapter 5 and let's read chapter 5, because that's the bulk of what AA is all about. Did you read it? And I was like, oh yeah, I read it. It was fantastic. It was life-changing. And so she said, well, open up the book and let's read it. So I'm back in the back of the stories, and I started reading this book. She was like, that's not chapter 5. She said, you're lying. I bet you haven't even opened the book. And I was like, yeah, I've been reading it every day. I hadn't even opened the book. And so she said these words to me. She said, you are risking my sobriety. So therefore, I have to let you go. And I'm so sorry. You'll probably be dead here in the next couple of months. Wow. So that Wednesday morning, she called. And she said, where are you? I said, I'm at work. I'm not feeling well. I'm hungover. And she said, at 12 o'clock, there's a meeting at this Catholic church. And I said to her, I ain't going to no Catholic church. I'm not converting. And she was like, you don't convert in AA. This is just where they have meetings, Yeah. And she walked me to that door. And I said, I'm at the door. And she said, you need to go in. And so I walked in with her on the phone. And that's when she finally said, I'm done with you. I've done what I need to do. Now, what I hope is that you stay sober and have a good life. And I never heard any more from her until my 1 year anniversary. And she had gotten in touch with my sponsor and knew that I was picking up my 1 year medallion. And a few weeks later, she drove down to Charlottesville to see me. We stayed in touch. And then just when COVID hit, I got a call from her friend that said that Sherry was in Mercy Hospital in New York. She had COVID. And then the next call that I got was that Sherry had died from COVID. And that stung, because here's a person that literally introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what we do. That's what we do. And I mentioned AA so much through the book because I tell people it's the longest relationship I've ever had. 16 years. I mean, I tried the relationship. There's a chapter in the book about Constance, which was in the beginning a beautiful relationship. And my anger and my confusion of my gender drove that relationship apart. And so AA has been the longest relationship of anything that I've done positive in my life. And I've learned from AA because AA said we can't keep it, we have to give it away. And that we have to be of service. And so I took what AA taught me and I moved it into my trans community. I have to help. And so I do a lot. I speak a lot about AA in my book because AA saved my life.
Wow. So, I mean, my understanding of addiction is that trauma is usually at the root of it. And so I'm not that familiar with AA. So does AA help you to address those things? Is that how it works? Is that one of the ways that it helps people?
It's really weird. AA is a weird culty thing, I remember the first time I really got into it, and I was like, here I am standing around the say this prayer in the beginning, and then everybody's talking about their feelings, and people are laughing because somebody's put their car on a tree, and they're laughing like, oh yeah. I'm like, and then at the end, there's this kumbaya moment where everybody's holding hands and says this prayer again, and and there's this unknown thing of it works. And I have two sponsors, and both of them are very by the book, and that's exactly what I need. The first sponsor was a female sponsor. I had to have who I had. She was by the book. It was about the book, and no bullshit. And so now I still have her, and then I have a male sponsor. Same thing, by the book, about the book, walk the walk, talk the talk. And what what I've learned from these old timers, as we call them, and that's who I hung out with, a lot of the old timers, was that you don't go in AA and vomit out all this message. I wouldn't go in AA and vomit out about the bad relationship, the abuse. I could share about it in a general way, but what AA was about here's your problem. What are you going to do about it? And where's your solution? And so I learned early on in my path of recovery is that there's a problem, but I'm always got to search for the solution. And the solution is somewhere in that book and in those steps. And so, I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person. And so there's, I wake up in the morning, I say a set of prayers, I read a couple things, and I go with my day. And if somebody says, can you talk to me about AA? Can you sponsor me? I used to not have anybody. Now I would think nobody wants me to sponsor them. I don't know who to sponsor right now. I can't, you're telling me not to sponsor a woman, you're telling me not to sponsor a guy, but I still have the sponsor, and now I'm a guy. But all of a sudden people started wanting to know. So sponsorship is this thing where they're accountable to me, and I'm accountable to my sponsor. And so the thing that AA talks about is you take the mess to your sponsor and you bring the message in the rooms. We want to hear the solution. And so that's what I learned a long time ago in AA was that I don't need to go in there and talk about how, I've got a terrible relationship and I think we're going to, split up. I want to go in these rooms and say, hey, I've been struggling with this relationship. And AA has taught me this is what I need to do. And for some odd reason it works. The steps work, it works. I have no, I mean, if I could figure that out, I'd have the money, I'd have the money, but it just works.
Well, and again, my exposure to it is limited, but I think of the Serenity Prayer. And to me, that little blurb, that little passage, I mean, if you're going to go for a comprehensive summary of how to approach life, it's a pretty good one. And it's, again, like, I'm pretty deep into spiritual traditions, philosophy, and one of my favorites is Stoic philosophy, which came out of Greece and then into Rome. And Epictetus, who was one of the Roman Stoic philosophers, says exactly what the Serenity Prayer says. He was 2,000 years ago saying the secret to happiness is knowing that there are things you can control and things you can't control.
Right.
And once you get a handle on that, life gets a lot easier. And so, obviously there's all these elements in AA of that, as well as surrendering to a higher power, which I want to ask you about, because you did say you're not religious, but you're spiritual. So when you pray, what are you praying to in this situation?
I pray to a higher power that I choose to call God.
Yeah.
And I know that I am not in control of anything. And so we talk about in AA, we don't do these Santa Claus prayers. Oh God, if you just give me $1,000 to pay my light bill, I will not cheat again. I will not drink again. I will not steal again. Just this one time, God, please. And that's what I was doing when I went into AA. It was just like, oh God, just don't let me overdose one more time and die. And so now my prayers are just for a long time in AA, the best I could say for a prayer was the Serenity Prayer. And then at the end, I would just say, thy will, not mine, be done. And I still say that a lot now. When I'm encountering things, it's just like, it's not my will. It's not my will. I'm just giving it up. I'm just laying it here. And there are what's called promises all through the book of AA. And one of the promises that are famous in AA that people call AA promises, which they're really not, they're called the 9-step promises. And so they're right in this 9-step when you're doing all your amends and, you're cleaning your shit up. And, this 9-step promises just tells us that we will lose fear of stuff. And I'll be damned if that doesn't work. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have fearful moments, but I catch myself and I think, I don't have any control of this. So, here it goes. And when I realized that was working was when my ex had left me, and then I got word that I couldn't hold on to that house. And I had to leave that house. House went into foreclosure, and I'm on unemployment. And I got to find some work to do. And I'm just sitting in this parking lot. And there's this guy that was in AA that was the craziest damn biker redneck dude you'd ever want to see. But he and I were the best of friends. We had some type of fun. That was just that irony of how you connect with the type of people you connect with in AA. And he pulls up on this motorcycle, and I'm just literally sitting in front of this dollar store. And he comes over and jumps in my car, and he's like, "What's your problem?" And I said, "I don't have anywhere to live. I don't have a job." And so he said, "Follow me." And so I followed him into this apartment complex. And I was like, "Jerry, I don't have money to get into an apartment." And he's like, I work at these apartments. Let me talk to my boss. And all I know is a month later, I'm in this apartment. I lived in this apartment for about 2 years. I was able to pay it. How, I don't know. And I remember him telling me, he said, "You need to walk the walk and talk the talk." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, what do we talk about in AA? Your fear is shit you don't need to fear." He said, "It's going to work out." He said, "Look, you got keys." It worked out. And that was that very moment that I realized I can stay swallowed up in fear, or I can recognize, acknowledge the fear, and then again, as AA teachers, take that action and try to figure out what I need to do. And I applied that with everything. I mean, even, when Margot approached me, I was pretty fearful. And then I remember that she said those words that I felt like, oh, I was on the world's biggest roller coaster and I had just gone down that hill. I mean, it came up when she said, are we ready to push the button?
To publish your book. Yeah.
I was like, okay, so that means what? And she said, that means in 24 to 48 hours, the world has had the book. And I started thinking, so, I blasted my uncle who's, fucked me over for, 3 or 4 years. And, it's really happening. It's really happening. And I remember after I got off the call with Margot, I sat right here and I was like, oh shit. I was like, what have I done? We've been working on this for the whole year. And
but now it's real.
Oh God, it's real.
Yeah.
And I just stopped and I said the serenity prayer. And then I was like, it's not about me. Don't make this book about you. Make this book about who can help, who it can help.
Absolutely.
Just take me out of the equation and just who can help. And so I told you guys a story about how I went into the T-Mobile, and this person recognized me because people were putting the book in social media spaces. And, that's when I realized, you're right, this book is not about me. This person was so excited to get this book so that their husband, who's trans, can read it and help them get some understanding of where their path is going to be. And his path probably wasn't abuse. His path maybe wasn't about alcohol, maybe, but his path was about being a trans man. So all these boxes that this thing checks on who can it help. And when I removed myself, but dude, I tell you, when she said, I'm ready to push the button. That was that level of anxiety.
Of course. I mean, you're laying your whole life bare. You're being transparent. You're vulnerable. You're just, again, you're putting yourself out there and no defenses, just like, here it is. Here's my life story. All the details are there, and the traumas, everything that you went through. So, I mean, you'd have to be crazy not to feel some trepidation before pushing that button.
Pushing that button. I just remember those words. She said, we ready to push the button. I'm like, what does that mean? And then she said, oh, in 40, how Margot is, in 48, 24 to 48 hours, he'll be out for the world to have. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah. But you've got the right idea, the right approach. And actually, Margot's daughter, my wife, Candace, her little motto lately has been find the fear, lean into it, and level up. Which I'm like, damn. I mean, it's not easy to do, but if you can do it, you will benefit from it, right? And that's exactly what you're doing. You're leaning into it and you are leveling up. I mean, look at you. I mean, you are yourself truly and fully. And that's something that, trans or not, regardless of color or age or anything, very few people are able to truly be themselves and to accept themselves. And to, like you said earlier, some days you look in the mirror and you're like, oh God, not today. That's okay too. That's part of being your full authentic self. You're not always going to be flying high, right? So kudos to you, because again, it's an astronomical feat for anyone, let alone for someone who's gone through some of the things that you've gone through. So yeah, you're an inspiration, sir.
I realize, it's funny, just little crazy stuff makes me see how healthy I am these days. And I remember, when I was big, that clothes wasn't even an issue. I mean, most of my clothes were soiled from dropping food or burn holes with potholes and cigarette holes in them. And I didn't care what I looked like, let alone, I would bathe, but, I just didn't care what I looked like. And so I'm in this closet the other day trying to find this flag, this white ally. Said I would love to be able to fly, a pride flag during Pride Month in Charlottesville on my street. And she's a friend of my sister's, and I was like, oh, I've got a bunch of them. So I go in this closet and I open this closet up and I look and I'm like, how in the hell can I wear all these clothes? And where did they come from? And I realized clothes doesn't make the man, but here now I really care about what I look like. I care about Charlie. And every shirt, every pair of pants that's in this closet, it's not because I'm this vain guy and I want to step out looking nice all the time. It's that I love Charlie enough to take care of Charlie.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like if we can get to that level, life is so good. You know, it's just when we can get to a level where we just say, you know what, I am okay. I tell people I could die today or tomorrow, and I think I have lived the dream that I thought. You know, I just remember when I still go back to that Commodore 64, you know, plugging on those big keys and thinking, I wish I could make a book. I wish I could write a book. I wish I could sell this book. I wish people would really want to read it. And I wish, you know, I could pull up, you know, on whatever site and see my book. And I know this is really ego, but every now and then I'll just pull up the phone and I'll go to Amazon and I'm like, let me just type Charley Burton in. You know, type Charley Burton in and there it is.
Yeah.
I'll share this quickly. My sister babysits her great grandchild. And so she was born 2 pounds. So, you know, she's named after my mother. And so she has that fighting spirit to survive. And she's now 8 or 9 months, doing great. But every now and then she has like this esophageal stuff problem. And so she was having some problems yesterday, and my sister decided to call the EMTs to come. But everything turned out okay. And so she called me last night and she said, one of these big burly, redneck white firemen out here that showed up for the call was standing there talking to her, and my book was on their coffee table. And she said, Chuck wants to know, she said, oh, can you send me a book over? Because Chuck wants to buy your book. And I'm like, what is he going to do with it? And she said, oh, he was really interested in it. He said, you know, he wants to buy your book so he can read it. And I said, why? And she said, because people want to know.
Yeah.
You know, and that simple answer of people want to know, not so much want to know about me, but I think they want to know about what people go through.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing that this book is touching people who don't check the box that I check off, like we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
It just baffles me, and it surprises me, and it honors me that people want to, they want the book to read so that they probably can help somebody else.
Well, and I think ultimately help themselves, because when, you know, and you say, you know, I think some people are not open. Some people don't want to know. Some people might just think like, oh, that's not me. That's not my thing. Whatever. Great. But I think you'd be surprised at the number of people who are open and curious and who care. They just care, right? To me, it's like skin color, gender identity, sexual orientation, those types of things. That's like the color of your car. Like, I don't like, you know, you got a blue car, I got a red car. Underneath the hood, we're all the same. And so the experiences that you've had, I can map those out to experiences that I've had where I felt like an outsider. And again, it doesn't matter what I look like. On the inside, I felt completely like I didn't belong anywhere. And so, you know, I listened to you talking, and it's like, I know how that feels. Now, I don't know exactly how that felt for you, but I can relate to it. And so even though I don't check the boxes, I do check the boxes. I'm a human being, right? And I've been confused about who I am, and I have tried to be something I wasn't. And I think most people, when they're honest with themselves, can acknowledge that that's been a part of their lives as well, because our entire culture, the way it works, it indoctrinates you, programs you in different ways to try, you know, it tries to shape you into being something that you're not. So yeah, I think you'd be surprised at the number of people that will, and that probably already have related and been positively impacted by your book and your story, because yeah, it's, you know, the check boxes that you're talking about to me are very superficial. Underneath the surface, we're all very much the same. And so the things that you've gone through. I can definitely relate. And then on top of that, it's like, not, I can relate, but then, because your situation and some of the things that you went through are a lot more traumatic than anything I've gone through. It's like, there's also this whole compassion and sympathy thing that comes out of it, empathy. So it really is a gift. It's a service, what you've done writing this book. And again, it's a sacrifice, because you're taking these very personal, painful memories and you're putting them out there for the benefit of others. So yeah, kudos again, very commendable.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you met Margot there. That's a fortuitous event there.
First of all, I don't even know how I met Jude to do Transist.
Yeah.
And then, Margot admits that she went to that conference to hear. The joke was that I was with Jameson Green and Xander Craig when this was on this panel, and so we would do these preliminary meets. And so I remember, like, the day before we were supposed to meet that Saturday, I can't remember if it was Xander or Jameson. And I'm like, Charlie, we're worried about you, dude. And I'm like, why? And they're like, you're too quiet. You're going to have to be able to speak up. And I'm thinking, you guys just don't know. I've got the secret weapon. I'm ready to blow you out the water when I get in there. When the camera's on, I am ready to roll. And so when it was over with, we went back into another, little whole waiting area on Zoom. And Jameson was like, where did this guy come from?
You were saving it up.
Right. I was like,
yeah.
And I think when I was meeting with them, I believe Jude was on that panel with us as well, I believe, I was in such awe, because you got to realize Jameson's book was one of the first books I read about being trans. I remember I was so poor and I had no money. I had to save up money, to be able to go to Barnes and Noble. And first of all, I had to order it, and go to Barnes and Noble and get this book. And now all of a sudden, I'm sitting on a panel with this guy, and I'm kind of blown away. And I'm like, what do I have to offer these people, published authors? And now here I am. Just a few weeks ago, I sent Jameson the link to the book, and he was so excited, and he was like, I'm going to, save this to read while I'm on vacation. And I'm thinking, I've got Jameson's number in my phone. I mean, it's just amazing.
Comes full circle.
Yeah. My transition 11 years ago will be 12 in September.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. So on the subject of your transition, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, you made a comment about how people don't just see you as a man, but they see you as a Black man, right? And so there's this kind of cross section of gender and race, right? And so what, if anything, like, there's kind of a juxtaposition there for me in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my theory or my assumption would be that to go from presenting as a female to presenting as a male, you gain a sort of male privilege, right? But then what you're saying is that because of the color of your skin, it's almost like a trade-off. It's like, now all of a sudden people look at you as a man, but they look at you as a Black man. And so what differences in terms of how people react to you have you noticed since transitioning? How has that changed for you?
So as a man, I'm at the top of my field with my job now. Whereas before, I couldn't land the jobs. I couldn't land the management jobs. As soon as I started transitioning and then really could pass, I started getting the management jobs that I should have had all along.
Wow.
So that I equate to being a man.
Wow. So you got to see firsthand the systemic sexism that is present there. Yeah. Wow.
Same guy. I haven't had a lobotomy. Same person.
Yeah.
I still offer the same amount of talent.
Yeah.
But now when I sit across the table for the job, you're seeing a man.
Present as a man. Yeah.
Exactly. And so then, as a Black man here in Charlotte, so I get the doors closed in my face. I get the stares. I remember I was working a job before the job I had to do a lot of traveling. And so I was in this I used to inspect these buildings. And so I'm in this town called Roanoke, Virginia. And I mean, it's just this high dollar, almost like a Fortune 500 building that we had as a contract. And I get in this plush elevator. And I get on, I'm in my dress shirt, tie, got my little portfolio, and these two white women are on the elevator. And when I step on, they both go way over to the left, and they're just clutching their purse. And so I get off the elevator, and I remember I get in my car and I call my sponsor, who's now a white Catholic woman, older. And I said, Gloria, you wouldn't believe just what happened. And just as lovingly and as stern as she is, she was like, you get what you pay for. And so I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, and that's what you want? And I was like, what? And she's like, did you not want to transition so that the world perceives you as man?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but she said, but nothing. She said, yes, unfortunate what you had to go through.
Yeah.
Buck up, buddy. It's not going to get any easier. And she said, you're going to have to learn that people are not seeing Charlie the trans man, they're seeing a black man.
Wow.
And you're going to figure out that you're not this articulate, kind, loving guy. She said, did you try to engage in conversation with him? And I was like, no, it's the best. She said, well, I bet you if you had tried to engage in conversation with you, one of two ways is going to happen. They wouldn't have talked to you. Or she said, knowing she used to call them, knowing as white privileged women are, they would probably think when you got off the elevator, well, that's an articulate black guy. And so, but she said such truth to me.
Yeah.
That was when it clicked. It clicked. I was like, she's right. I've paid this money to look like this. And so I get what I pay for.
Yeah. In a way, that reaction of those ladies is validation. In a way, it's unfortunate that the system and the culture is as such, but it's like almost like proof positive that like you definitely pass for a man because the way they reacted towards you is, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. So when you presented as a woman, you didn't have those types of interactions with white ladies. They didn't react to you that way. It's when you started.
There was 3 women that I approached,
in AA. Yeah.
Right. But of course, now you got to figure, I'm not sober, don't care what I look like.
Yeah.
Brand new. Yeah. We're judgmental when somebody new comes in and doesn't pick up a white chip. It's like, oh, we don't want to waste their time. And I used to tell everybody, I think there were people in AA that were betting, thinking, not even betting, but just thinking, they're not going to make it. I don't know, but there were so many that saw that glimmer of desperation. I don't think there's a house in AA that I couldn't go, AA community, that I could knock on the door and be welcomed with open arms. That's just how we roll. And I'm sure there's some that swallowed hard that I was in there because of the color of my skin. I'm sure there might have been some of them that was even took a field trip January 6th up to the Capitol. That's just who's, we have all different types.
Yeah.
The bottom line is our desire is to see a person stay sober. Yeah. And it's an amazing community in Charlottesville, the AA community, and that's why that book has so much about AA in it, and because that's the community that saved my ass.
Yeah, and it sounds like what you're saying is that the goal or the objective of sobriety supersedes all other differences, so that even if you've got somebody like you said who was at the Capitol on January 6th, there's something bigger and more important to them, which is remaining sober, and that supersedes their political beliefs and their religious, all that other stuff is kind of just building into that goal.
They've accepted Charlie the black man.
That's right. Yeah.
And so when I have the elevator encounters or the looks, those words of my sponsor echoed, you get what you pay for, and so this is life.
Yeah.
And, a quick story was I had that last year was just an incredible year. I was getting all these awards for different things, and so the local TV station did this interview with me. And so it aired that Sunday. And so I'm getting dressed for work, and I make the turn to go up the hill on our campus, and it hits. I'm like, oh shit. I wasn't really out to anybody like that about being trans on my job. I was just Charlie. And my boss knew, because, and the operations person knew, because they had to do, I had to get a federal background check. So they knew, but other people on the campus, other contractors didn't. And so I make that turn, I'm going to the hill, and I'm like, oh my God, you know what? This is not going to be a good day. So I pull in, I back in, and one of my supervisors comes running up the hill, and he says, the dean of faculty wants to see you. I'm like, oh, here we go. Because I had 10 years before that gotten fired from a job because I had did an article about an organization that I was working for, which was a trans organization. And so I'm like, you know what, buddy? My sponsor's words echo, you get what you pay for. You might have to go find another job, but guess what? You're pretty employable. I'm playing all this, going to the elevator to this guy's office. And I get to his office and I knock on the door and I said, Michael, did you need to see me? And he said, I just wanted to forewarn you that you probably have about 30 kudos in your email box when you get to your office. And I hope you don't mind. I sent everybody the clip. He said, because I think everybody needed to know. So I'm like, this is still not good. And so I thanked them, and I got down to my office, and the title of the email was, there's a hero that walks on our campus. And here's all these emails. And then there was just one email from one professor who is the diversity and inclusion on the campus. And he wanted to make sure that no one has ever said anything out of the way to me, that my experience up there as a contractor has been pleasant, and that if I ever needed anything, that he was there. And, it made such a difference. And no one ever talks about me being trans. No one slips up for the pronouns. I'm just Charlie. I do my job. There's a guy that will come in sometime and talk about what it's like for me, especially after all the unrest with George Floyd and so forth. He would come in and ask me, how I was doing, and was the world treating me okay as a Black man.
Yeah.
And then that's when I realized, those words are so true. You get what you pay for, and what I'm paying for right now is okay. It's okay. There are some people who are not pleasant to me because of what they see, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, and the best way to work on those people is to do exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that story you just told me about the emails in your inbox and stuff, like, faith in humanity is, it must be bolstered by those types of events, especially if you're going in with an expectation of, oh, this is not going to be good. And then everybody's supportive and loving and kind and admiring. Like, man, makes me feel better about humankind. I was expecting to hear some kind of horror story there. So I'm glad that it's good people.
I remember 10 years before that was just a snippet of, Charley Burton, who's with Black Trans Men Incorporated, did a booth, here for Seville Pride. And I come in the next day, there's this, the article. So that was that Saturday. I'm off on Monday. So I come in on that Tuesday, and here's the Sunday paper still in the break room, article face up. And I get my coffee. And so I'm getting my coffee, and this little old lady comes up and puts her hand on my shoulder, and she said, I'm going to pray for you, honey, because you need to for. I'm like, here we go. And so I did my work all day, just noticed nobody was coming around, hanging around me. If I got up to go get coffee or something, there was some whispers going on. And I was like, it's not good. And by 4:30, I'm called into this office with 3 or 4 other managers, and I was selling cars over the internet. Mm-hmm. And it's 10 years ago when that's really getting popular. And they said they felt that they were going to go in a different direction. Well, I looked at her and I said, James, dude, I said, you and I just talked last week about how my commission check is bigger than my take home. And I don't have a draw anymore. I'm always making money. Yeah. I said, so what's the problem? Oh, well, we think we're just going to go in a different direction.
The direction of not making money.
Right. And
yeah.
I remember seeing one of my coworkers like 3 weeks later, he was like, why'd you leave? And I was like, I didn't leave, I got fired. And he was like, They told us that you found something better, and they had a new hire within about 4 days after you left. But 10 years ago, I couldn't do anything with it. I didn't have any laws to protect me, and so I just had to suck it up. And that just started that debacle of bad jobs. Then finally, because I was still in that in-between stage of work. And finally, when things started working, that's when the jobs started popping. And I'm at a job now where I know I'll retire from. And so, I guess transitioning has some of its perks, and as my sponsor says, I get what I pay for.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there's so many different like layers to it, right? I mean, so in your travels, in your interactions with other members of the trans community, have you noticed a difference in the way people treat a trans man versus a trans woman? Have you noticed inherent biases one way or the other, or is it kind of universal across the board?
We trans guys, someone will probably kill me for saying this, but we have as the Willy Wonka kind, we have the golden ticket.
Oh, okay. So you have it easier than a trans woman. Yeah.
We have something that we pump in our veins that make us look exactly what we want to look like. And so not only trans women have it hard, but people who live as non-binary. Binary individuals, and that's something I'm all learning as well, but non-binary individuals, I believe, have a hard time. But the majority of trans women don't have $250,000, $300,000 to do the feminization and do all the work that money can buy to make you look like a woman. Right. So this is why we have this high level of HIV, especially with Black trans women, because they're out there being sex workers. They make money. They can't find decent jobs. They can't get the money to be able to look the way they truly want to be. Right. Our trans sisters have a much harder time than I believe trans men do. Trans men, we have our share of problems, but externally, we can make it a lot easier than trans women in the non-binary community. I remember we being Charlotesville Pride has not had a huge Pride festival in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. I remember the last one that I went to, there was this couple that was walking around and they were non-binary. I mean, the woman had on a skirt and so what, but she had a beard, or they had a beard. Hey, you living your life. And I was sitting at the booth that I was working, and I'm sitting back and I'm just watching. Now, here you are at a Pride festival, and you're stopping and staring at people that look different. And then I realized, I bet you if I walk through this crowd, they're not going to stop and look at me because I don't have that different look. Right. And that's when the light bulb really clicked, in that even within our community, we have people who struggle mightily and harder than I would. And the numbers of Black trans women trans women of color that are killed every year.
Disproportionately, per capita, it's crazy. Wild. So you think you don't think, I mean, in your opinion, it has to do with presentation. It has to do with the fact that a trans man presents as an authentic male more easily than the other way around. And then the non-binary, of course, because they're not trying to present one way or another, they're going to stand out. And so really, again, it comes back to superficiality. It comes back to what you see on the surface and people reacting to those surface level appearances. What a shame.
And I mean, even within my own culture, I'm just learning about non-binary, and the bottom line is you're just choosing to be who you want to be. That's all.
There you go. Bingo.
Right.
Yeah. I was trying to have this conversation with my 12-year-old, right? Because she's talking about, well, I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, why don't you just be yourself? And if
So,
today you're, attracted to boys, then that's today. And tomorrow, if you're, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to put a label on it. Just be yourself and worry about that. Don't worry about what that is. What's my label? What's this? What's that? And again, labels are helpful, right? It's helpful to categorize things for logistical reasons, but you're more than any label that you can ever attach to yourself. And again, this is why I think your book and this conversation are really important, because what you look like on the surface doesn't tell your story. But when we get into your story, we see that, again, you're a human being who's gone through things. You've had traumas, you've had, addiction, you've overcome a great deal. And here you are still standing, as you said.
mhm.
And so to me, yeah, it's just, we got to get underneath the surface, right?
All right, gotta get underneath that skin.
That's right. Yeah, there you go. Wow, very good. So any messages, any parting words that you'd like to share with, I guess, somebody who might be going through what you've gone through at any point in your journey? You want to help people, you want to share your story in order to give them something they can relate to, examples of how you can overcome things. So what would you say to someone who's maybe struggling with some of the same things that you struggled with?
Gotta get help, mental health. And if this book doesn't show anything, it shows that African American culture has this, or they had, and I think we still do have, this aversion that we need to go get help. And I can't tell you how many times when I would be in therapy, my mother would be angry because she was fearing that I was telling the secrets to the white people.
Mm.
And so that led me to go to therapy, where I wasn't truthful.
Mm.
I just tell them what they want to hear, but I wasn't telling them what I needed to tell them. And I see so many people in the LGBTQ community and people, period. I mean, we look at these mass shootings that we have here in the States. The majority of the people who do that, somewhere along the line, had mental illness as an underlying factor, and it's untreated. And I don't agree with, and I'm gonna get slapped on this one. I do not agree that you just wake up one morning and say, "Hey, doc, write me a letter so I can pump some stuff in my veins so I can, transition." I believe my transition has been as successful and it has been as less rocky. I mean, it was rocky, but it was lonely. I would say my transition was very lonely because I didn't have people, or I didn't know where to go. And so I went to things by myself to be able to, I did it. I rolled up my sleeves and I went to places by myself without anybody supporting me because I knew that's what I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to a lot of therapy. I remember when I wrote that letter, when I wrote those letters and handed that journal to my therapist for her to read because I couldn't tell her that I thought I was trans. All I could do was give her the book and she read it over a weekend. She said, "Where do you want to go from here?" And I remember saying, "I don't think I need a letter to get, testosterone right now because I'm still so very angry. And they tell me that if I put testosterone in me, I'll be even angrier. And I'm afraid I might kill myself or somebody." And so I went almost another 8 or 9 months before we even entertained the idea. And I think trans is the new black.
Mm.
And trans is the pharmaceutical companies, the doctors want to move trans people as quickly as possible. And you do not move people as quickly as possible when it is this much of a life-changing event going on. You gotta know who you are. And that's what I did week after week after week. Painful as it was, I got to know who I was. And still, that wasn't enough. Even even when I did get the testosterone, I still had problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was on testosterone, and I still 5 years, 5 years, I was 5 years sober, getting on testosterone, and was still a mess.
Mm.
But I kept going to therapy. And
Yeah.
so I think it's so important that before you make this life-changing decision, that you build a relationship with a therapist. And not only do you build a relationship with a therapist, you get to know who you are. And I don't know how that would play out for someone, whatever path that you need. You and I were talking about the whole Zen, something that you need to be able to turn your spirit over to something other than yourself, and be able to learn who you are. I know who I am. I know what makes me tick. I know what will set me off. I know what to avoid. I know now. I am so in tune with when I need to avoid things, what I need to do, that it's all because I have really taken the time to know who Charley is. And sometimes I had to go sit and pay some money to somebody for 90 minutes for them to be able to do 50 minutes and for them to tell me, as crazy as it sounds, I gotta throw stuff off. Like this today is therapeutic for me because I'm able to speak stuff that is healing for me as well.
Yeah.
And I see so many of these young guys, they're just ready to just jump. I don't know about when I can just speak to the guys that I help mentor. They're ready to jump to be a man so quickly.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. You got a lifetime to become a man. I'll die not being the full man that I've always wanted to be, but I'm happy with where I'm at.
Yeah.
If we ever fully get to where we want to be, we just move through life and just try to move through life as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
Just encouraging words to young trans people, non-binary, trust the process. Take the time.
Yeah.
Take the time.
Well, now I have to ask you a follow-up question because I thought we were wrapping up, but now I got to ask you this one. Based on what you said, and this is something again that I have opinions, but I don't know anything, right? So I'm not pretending to know anything, but I am seeing something, a trend towards young people, very young people, like getting put on like hormone blockers and things like that, or even getting some of the procedures done like at a very young age. And based on what you're saying, and again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying you really got to get to know yourself and work on yourself before you make those types of life altering decisions. And so my question is, what's your take on the sort of the way that the system is treating youth in this context, with putting them on hormone blockers and fast tracking them through the procedures? Is that something that you're concerned about, or is that something
if I were 8 years old today and had parents who were understanding of this, I at 8 would relish that my parents are supportive, but I want to walk the walk a little while to make sure this is exactly what I want. I help facilitate the support group here in Charlottesville that meets once a month, and I am almost like a magnet drawn to these little young kids that come in, and the beauty of the parents allowing them to be who they want to be, and allowing them, one parent says if my daughter gets up, my daughter has a full array of things in her closet. And so if she wants to get up and go to school with combat boots on and camouflage, that's what you're wearing today. And tomorrow, if you wake up and you want to wear the pink tutu and some makeup, that's what you're going to do today. And so I love when parents allow kids to express themselves on who they want to be at any given time. When you start bringing the medical aspect into it, let's make sure that everybody is on board, including that child.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I had a kid and this kid came to me, I would say, okay, let's get some therapy, but we're not going to do anything medically for at least a year or two. Let's just get yourself comfortable with where you want to go in the path, and let's get you with others who are like you.
Mm.
And so I'm very much a firm believer in support groups. I'm very much a firm believer in that kids need to be able to, you need to really know.
Yeah.
At a kid, how do you know?
That's the question. Yeah. And I completely agree with you. And what you're saying is spot on in my personal opinion. It's like, you want to dress a certain way, you want to identify as something, 100% support. But I remember what it was like being a child and a teenager. And I would have made some really terrible decisions at that age, right? And not to say that some of these kids won't actually grow up to be trans, right? But I know I met a lot of people in when I was younger who flip-flopped on a variety of things like that, right? One day you feel like this, one day you feel like that. It changes very quickly. And so to make permanent decisions.
I was 2 years in transition, and I'm on the internet trying to find how I can detransition because nobody wants to date me. That's what I was at. I'm going to detransition because I can't find a girlfriend.
Right.
And so was I stable in my transition at that point at 2 years? No. And you know what I did? I picked up the phone and I said, I need to find me a therapist. You know, just finished with one about a year ago. I need to get back in again because there's some crazy stuff going on in my head right now. And I'm about ready to drop some dollars in some little cult thing down in North Carolina. And this ain't good.
Yeah.
This is not good. And so I had to get back in. And
Yeah.
I had to really dig deep again. And it was all about, the hell do I care whether I have a girlfriend at this point? I don't need excess baggage right now. What I need to do is be able to get myself back into some type of stableness.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can, and I remember I shared this, there was this gentleman in AA that when he died, he had almost 60 years of sobriety. And he was the first person to find AA in the CIA.
Wow.
This dude was cool. He was cool. He was a retired Marine. Why this guy would come and sit beside me at the noon meeting every day, and we would have conversations. And then when I was real damn crazy in a meeting, he would just tap me on the leg and point for me to go back to the kitchen. And he would take me in the kitchen and close the door and start talking to me. And so I'm in there belly aching about no girlfriend. I don't have a life. And he was like, are you shopping for one in AA? And I was like, well, yeah, that's what I need, right? Somebody that understands the program. He said, let me tell you something. He said, when you're looking for somebody to love in AA, it's like you're going to the junkyard expecting to buy a brand new car. It ain't going to work. And these are the kind of things that I take into effect, and that I really think, and I'm probably going to get all kind of slack on this, I really think with children, they've really got to know what they're doing. And I think they really need a lot of support. We have this support group that we have a mother that really does a lot of things with the children as a group so that they see others like them. Because we got to be for real. When you go to school, you might not see a lot like you, and that's all. We don't even know what children are going through on that whole bullying aspect when they're trying to be different. You know what it was like for me, and that was in the 60s. We don't even know what the bullying aspect, and we know that bullying leads to a lot of kids with suicide.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be able to create spaces for kids who are questioning their gender and their path. We need to be able to find spaces where they're with others like them.
Yeah.
So that they have that support, so that they will feel confident that one day they wear the combat boots and the next day they wear the pink tutu, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And as far as the medical end of it, hey doctors, don't be so quick to throw the stuff at them until they have a chance just to live what it's like before they start going into a medical aspect of it. That's what I did, and some people might beg to differ. I think I turned out okay. And of course, although I was older when I did it, I don't think age makes a difference when you know you have to make a decision and you need to be able to know who that person is making the decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, it seems very reasonable to me. I hope you don't catch any flack for saying that, because
I
again,
don't care.
no, I know you don't care, but it's like, to me, it's like I'm interested in having these types of conversations with people, because again, it seems like certain things are almost like taboo these days, right? You can't, like, for example, the pandemic, there's a lot of things you couldn't talk about. And if you did, you were labeled a lot of things.
Right.
And I feel like, the subject of just the trans community in general is kind of like that as well, in some respects, where you can, asking questions can get you labeled like transphobic very quickly. And to me, it's like, well, you're never going to educate people, and you're never going to help some of the people who are actually transphobic overcome that phobia without having these types of conversations, right? And having those conversations in an open, curious, and compassionate way. So thank you for your candor on that subject. Yeah, because I had the same thoughts. It's like, I remember what I was like as a kid. I shouldn't have been trusted with that kind of decision. I shouldn't have been allowed to make those types of decisions about my health at that age. You can't vote, you can't drink, you can't drive until you hit a certain age. But apparently in some parts of North America, they're fast tracking kids. And so, I don't know if that's actually happening, but
It's just the parent needs to get to know the kid. So you know your kid this way, and now this kid is going to go this way. You need to get to know the kid on that side as well.
yeah.
And so that means you've got to educate yourself. I go back again to the support group that we have. We have books laid out. Some of the most loving parents come with their kids, and throughout the year, you see the kid change.
Yeah.
And you see the parents say, well, they can wear the binder, but no surgeries yet. They
Right.
can dress a certain way. We'll buy them the clothes, but no hormones yet. We just want them to be able to get to work, and that, I think, makes a stronger kid be able to be ready to choose who they want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the event that they change their mind, or that things change and stuff, there's nothing permanent, right? It's just
right. It's okay.
change your, yeah, exactly. No harm, no foul. And if they decide, well, no, actually, this is actually who I am, and I knew it all along, then it's like you hit your 18 or whatever and go for it. We start the treatments, right? So yeah, again, very reasonable. Makes a lot of sense from many different perspectives, as far as I can tell. Child psychology, medical stuff, but so it's nice to be able to have those types of conversations, because Candace and I have conversations about this kind of stuff, right? I see things on the news, and who knows if it's true or not, because you can't really trust what the media says. The times they're just trying to get ratings or scaremongering, but you read certain things and it's like, oh wow, like am I crazy, or does this sound crazy? And it's you got to get a feel from other people, otherwise you don't really know, right? It's just your opinion. So anyways, again, thank you for sharing that, and yeah, I completely agree with you. Is this the support group that you're describing, is that sort of built into the philosophy of the support group, that you're there to create space for the children, or is just some of these parents are taking that?
It's really strange. It's a trans support group, and we might have I've been going to it for a couple of years now. I help facilitate it. One month you might have a bunch of older trans women. I'll be the only trans guy there. Sometimes you might have more trans masculine guys that come, and sometimes you have kids come with their parents. And so it's a hodgepodge of everyone, but it's a PFLAG group. And so therefore, we support the parents, plus we also support the person who's trying to transition.
Nice. Awesome.
And I love it. I love the aspect of it, because it's just support. On a Saturday afternoon, here you go. We sit down in the basement of a building, and we're just here for support. And oh, by the way, here's an array of books that you can read. And the parents really dig into reading these books, because I remember my mother used to always tell me about this Bible verse that says something to the effect of, you have to study yourself approved. And so I think that is the most important thing that I would say to parents. You just have to study not only your child, but you also have to learn the whole what it's like to be in a trans world. And this is the beauty that the parents are coming in there sitting with people like me who's transitioned for the last 11, 12 years, or you might have a woman who just transitioned 5 days ago, or someone who's coming in. And what was so beautiful about it was you would have these trans women that worked throughout the day as their given gender, but would be able to come to this support group and dress the way they want to
be themselves.
Yes. And that was so powerful and so beautiful to be able to see that here was a space where during the week you can't do that, or you don't feel comfortable doing it. You can come here and you can be who you want to be and be able to dress the way you want. And I think that's so good for the parents to see these people come in. So that hodgepodge group of people is just, it's therapeutic for all.
Yeah, you're seeing people under the same umbrella as yourself, but very different, like you said, very different experiences with the transitioning and with their backgrounds. And so, I mean, and again, it's strength through diversity. We're better. We're better when we are diverse, when we have access to different viewpoints and different lived experiences. It makes us better. So I hope one day that the things that you're describing here won't be newsworthy, won't be worthy of celebration. They're just going to be things that happen every day all over the world, and no one even bats an eyelash. But unfortunately, the world that we live in right now, very externally focused and very superficially fixated, these are milestones that need to be acknowledged and celebrated, because just being yourself is a monumental achievement in this world. So thank you so much, Charley, for sharing your experience. Yeah, this was awesome. I love this conversation, and I'm going to finish your book, even though, again, it's... Let
me know what you think.
Well, so far it's very well written, and you definitely have a knack for the storytelling, I can tell. And one thing that I didn't get into with you that maybe one day we can talk about, maybe in a future episode, is these, I guess, DID, right? Dissociative identity disorder, and how you had a lot of these characters, or aspects of your personality, essentially, that you would protect you in your youth from some of these traumatic experiences. A very fascinating subject. So if you'd like to come on again and focus and talk about that, that would be awesome. I'm just going to plug the book here and try to hold it. I'll put a link in the description of the video to the book, and any other websites or organizations that you want to promote, I'll put them in there as well.
Okay.
And then as soon as it's up, I will share the link with you, so that if you want to share this interview with friends, family, and whoever, you're more than welcome to do so.
We'll do that. I love posting stuff on social media.
Do you? Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to find you on social media, because I don't think I have you yet. But we'll link up. And again, thanks for your time on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day.